Shanti, how are you all? Happy Dasara for everybody. And today we are going to reveal many secrets in this Dasara festival. Everybody knows that both Vijayadashami and Dasara are being celebrated on the very same day every year. But the manner in which they celebrate these two functions is entirely different. And even the story behind this function is also different from each other. And not only this particular day, but also the 9 days before that, that is Navratri. So Navratri, it's also called Ram Leela. So as the name suggests, it represents the 9 nights where Durga Devi fights with an evil for the 9 nights, and finally she succeeded on the 10th day, which is why they celebrate Vijayadashami. That is victory on the 10th day, that is Vijayadashami. And again this Dasara, even here das means 10, so it represents the 10 heads of Ravan, and that gets destroyed, Hara. So that is why they call that as Dussehra. So it is celebrated in a slightly different manner from state to state. It differs. And in places where they celebrate Vijayadashami, what they do basically is they carry the statues, big statues of Durga Devi made out of clay, which they used for worshipping for the past 9 nights, that is Navratri. So they would be decorating the idols, they'd be worshipping, they'd be offering bhog. And on the final day, that is on this Vijayadashami, they take that to the ocean and they just immerse it. That is what they do in Dasara. And for that is what they do in Vijayadashami. And for Dasara, what they do is they build a very big Ravan statue, or the effigy of Ravan, and they will burn the effigy in a big bonfire. That's how they celebrate Dasara. And one thing very interesting about Hinduism is all religious festivals, they will have more than one story. Each festival will have more than one story, and each festival will be celebrated in more than one way. So this particular function is the same like that. So for Dasara, what they say is during these 9 nights in Navratri, there's been a fight between Ram and Ravan, and finally he killed Ravan on the 10th day, which is why they celebrate this Dasara. So what happens is they both represent the same thing, because Durga Devi killing a demon called Mahishan, so that's a demon, and also this Ravan is also a demon. Actually he is the king of all demons, that's why he is shown with 10 heads, which means he has 10 times more power than all other demons. And also it has another meaning which I'll be saying shortly. And before burning the effigy of Ravan, they will enact the Ramayana shortly on this Dasara, or else they would enact the entire Ramayana for the past 9 days during Navratri. And so it actually coincides, the way they worship each festival will coincide with each other. So the most common types of worship is offering bhog, which is common to Hindu functions, and they uh, they observe fasting. They will wear beautiful dresses, uh, especially in yellow. Actually, it is one peculiar thing about this Navratri is throughout these 9 days they will worship Durga in North India, but that's not the case with South India. They also celebrate the same Navratri, but their way of worship is entirely different from that of North India. Here they have this collection of small idols of all Hindu gods, and they call it a gulu. So they arrange it in a very good manner, and they will sing praise of the deities, especially Durga, Lakshmi and Saraswati. So they allot the first 3 days of Navratri to worship Durga, and the next 3 days to worship Lakshmi, and the last 3 days to worship Saraswati. But in North India, they do it the other way around. They place stress in worshipping Durga for the last 3 days. Now, as the story goes, it's just about Durga Devi fighting with Mahishan. Have you ever thought of why should we worship Lakshmi and Saraswati, who has no part in this war? So only when you know the answer, then you can come up with the actual reason behind this, behind the significance of this function. So during this Navratri period, in South India, this is how they worship. They will just have this gulu. They will invite the neighbors to visit their gulu, and they will send them with some gifts. But not everybody will have the capacity to keep gulu because of the lack of the place or for some other reason. But whoever has gulu, they will invite their neighbors. So it will be a very big fun for kids. But in North India, they will just go to temple, and they will spend the night staying awake, and they will observe fasting for the first 6 to 7 nights, and only then they will finish fasting. And they have this 8th day to celebrate Durga Puja in a grand manner. But here in South India, we consider only the 9th day to celebrate Saraswati Puja. And also they have this habit of keeping an earthenware lamp completely ignited throughout these 9 days. And also they have this habit of keeping kalash both in South India and North India. So they will fill a small pot with water, and they will add 5 auspicious elements like turmeric, vermilion and so on, and they will close the mouth of the pot with a coconut, and they will cover the coconut with the Devi's face, and they will decorate that pot with their dresses to resemble that of Durga Devi, and they will consider that as Durga Devi, and they will worship that for the 9 days. So this is how they celebrate those 9 days. But what happens in this 10th day is they all, whether it's Dussehra or Vijayadashami, they all celebrate the victory of good over evil. And how do they celebrate? That is what we need to think of. They just don't sing, dance just like that. They dismantle the physical body of the deity whom they worship for the past 9 days. They dismantle the body of Ravan, Only the way they dismantle is different. In Vijayadashami, they dissolve the deity into the ocean, whereas here with Ravan, they burn the effigy of Ravan. So what happens basically is they just dismantle the physical appearance of both the deity and this Ravan or demon. To understand this particular form of worship where they dismantle the physical body totally, you need to understand, at least you need to have a brief understanding of what God's direct knowledge says. God says it is just a 5,000-year time cycle, where the first half of this cycle, which is also called Kalpa in Hindi, is heaven, and the last half of this cycle is hell. Yes, God created this planet Earth as heaven in the beginning, and it takes us 2500 years to turn the heaven into hell. So it is the same earth which was heaven in the beginning and hell now. So those who inhabit heaven, they are being worshipped in Hindu temples as deities. And ever wondered who they are? Not only that they were the residents of heaven, and also it is the fact that it is just us. Yes, it is our first birth as deities in heaven, and we start taking birth after birth in heaven for the first 2500 years, and after the completion of it, we start taking birth in hell, which means the heaven itself has converted back to hell, which can also be called as the old world. The new world is called heaven, which after becoming old becomes hell. So what's the big difference between heaven and hell? In heaven, we would be very smart, intelligent, we would be looking very beautiful, and we'll have all sorts of wealth. Now we'll be blissful, peaceful, wealthful, and healthful. So the reason we possess, or we were filled with all these prosperities and health, wealth and knowledge, is we wouldn't consider ourselves to be this perishable body while we were in heaven. Instead, we would consider ourselves to be this imperishable soul that shines like a tiny star in between our eyebrows, which is why Hindus till date has this habit of wearing vermilion or bindi here. So that's where we are located, and this body is just like a home for the soul, or like a mission, like a car. So just as a driver is needed to drive a car, your soul is needed to operate this body. Your soul is the driver for this body, and it is the soul that drives this body, and we are these souls and not this body. We are separate from this body. So they had that understanding, which is why they didn't fall for the 5 vices called lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. These 5 vices that are present both in men and women are combinedly called 10-headed Ravan. And as we read in Ramayana, there was no 10-headed person on this planet Earth ever. So it is just a representation or the personification of these 5 evils. These 5 evils, they are collectively called as Ravan or Satan or Maya. So they all represent the same, and we become slaves of Ravan only here. So what happens after the completion of first 2500 years is we forget the fact that we are souls. Instead, we wrongly considered ourselves to be these perishable bodies, and we fall slaves to these 5 vices and to the 5 senses. So once we become slaves for these 5 vices, it is inevitable that we have to suffer pain and sorrow as the consequence. So if you touch the fire, it will definitely cause burn. Similarly, if you touch these five vices either through your physical senses or through your mind, it will definitely bring sorrow. This knowledge is not given directly anywhere, and even if they did not say that it is because we forget the fact that we are this imperishable soul that we become slaves to these five vices. And that is why God comes towards the end of Kali Yuga, or towards the end of this old world, 100 years before that, and he says that you ruled this entire world when it was heaven. So there were no boundaries. You can go anywhere, both on sky, both on sea, and on land. So there were absolutely no barriers for you. That's why in Bible it is represented that I created humans to rule over sky and earth. So it represents the heaven which the India was in the beginning. Yes, only India was heaven. All the other countries, they were inside the sea. Only the India managed to be above the sea level. And the reason God comes in the last 100 years from his supreme abode, which is actually an orange colored light world. And God exists as a tiny point of light, just like we souls are. Yes, he is also a soul, which is why he is called the supreme soul, Param Atma. And the place he resides is called the supreme abode, or Parandam, or Parlok. So the name of this supreme soul or God is Shiva. And this same God Shiva is called Allah by Muslims, and the Heavenly Father by Christians. So God comes here and says that we have lost all the power that we once possessed while we were in heaven. So that is why we become slaves to these five vices and sensual pleasures. To conquer that, we need to accumulate power. And the only way to do that is to remember God as a point of light as much as possible, after considering ourselves to be this imperishable soul and not this perishable body. So we have to consider ourselves as a point of light and not this body. And we have to remember God also as a point of light. So more we remember God, more we will have some strange trembling sensation in between the eyebrows. What happens is we receive power directly from the Supreme Soul. And in addition to that, what happens gradually is we will be conquering these five vices. These five vices start to fade away from our intellect. So that happens only in the end. So that's when we become fully complete. And only after that there will be world destruction, which can be caused by the Third World War and also the natural calamities. And before that, we have to become ready. We have to become full with all the divine powers and virtues. And how to achieve that? One, we need to remember God as much as possible. That's very important, and that's the number one thing we need to do. But in addition to that, we need to listen to God's word daily. And where is it available? It is available in all Rajayogi meditation centers that's widespread across the globe, where they read the God's words as morally. It's absolutely free of cost, because it is God who himself is running this institution. So please feel free to rush to the nearest Rajayogi meditation center, with which we can even help if you send me a WhatsApp message on this number, or if you send the SMS +919894671743. If you happen to be a Tamil, then you can also find the Murli in Tamil by searching for BK Saravana Kumar Tamil Murli on YouTube. So what happens is there will definitely be difference between the students in a class, right? No matter how talented the teacher is, there's always going to be difference among students. Similarly, even when God himself is giving this knowledge, and we all take knowledge directly from God, even then there will be differences among us. So the more effort we put in forgetting this body consciousness and becoming soul consciousness, so that's going to determine when we are going to descend back from this place to earth, which is going to be heaven soon. Yes, during world destruction we will all be leaving our physical body and will be going back to our home, to God, and after that this will be converted to heaven. And the more power we accumulate by doing this Raja Yoga, which is nothing but considering ourselves to be souls and remembering God as much as possible. So the more power we accumulate, the soul accumulates, more is the chance the soul is going to come early, going to take birth early in heaven and start enjoying the full heaven during the course of 2500 years. But if you are not that careful, and if you are careless about accumulating power, then you will be coming only during the latter part. If you haven't accepted this knowledge, if you haven't burnt your sins by remembering God, then you will be staying there throughout the period the world was heaven. So only when it becomes hell, only then you will start taking birth and starts facing the sorrows and pains in the hell. One major significance about this kalpa is whatever happens in one kalpa, that keeps repeating kalpa after kalpa so accurately. To explain it very simply, if you are watching this video now, it obviously means you watched the same video 5000 years back on this very same day, and you will be watching this video over and over again on this same day, kalpa after kalpa. So it's that accurate. That is why we celebrate these functions. Don't think that we are celebrating something that existed in the past, that has that we have no connection with. No, that's not the case. We celebrate those things so that only when God comes we can relate his knowledge to the present festival, and we can come out of the fact that it is not about our ancestors, but it is about us. Yes, it is about us. So whatever happens in this last 100 years, while we take knowledge directly from God in conquering these 5 vices, that is what portrayed as the war of Ramayana, war of Mahabharata, the holy war of Quran. Everything represents about this subtle war between our intellect and the 5 vices, and not between the individuals, not between the humans. So people they falsely believe that has happened for real, and some people they even start taking life of people in the name of God, which is really bad. Which is why we are creating these videos, so that people get really spiritually awakened. So now coming to the connection between this direct knowledge of God and this Dasara and Vijayadashami. See, what happens is, so we have to consider ourselves to be these souls, and we have to forget the fact that we are this body. Actually, the fact is we are the soul and not this body, right? So we are constantly putting effort in bringing us and to stay permanently in this soul consciousness. So that is the subtle war that goes inside our mind. So we have to repeatedly remind ourselves to be this body, to be the soul that controls this body and not this body. So we should not be carried away by the sensual pleasures or the physical pleasures of the world. But it takes time, because for the last 2500 years our mind is so deeply recorded with the thought that we are this perishable body. So to destroy that completely takes time. So when we become fully complete, when we become fully soul conscious, that is when natural calamities start to happen. That is when the old world gets destroyed. You know why? Because we become eligible to enter heaven. We can no longer present in this old body and old world, because we do not deserve that. After becoming pure, why should we face the sorrow that this world is filled with now? So that is why world destruction happens. So the better way of explaining world destruction is actually the world renewal. The old world gets renewed into Satyug, the new world, heaven. So only when we come out of this body consciousness we can enter heaven. So that's the thing, and the only way to achieve that is to constantly remember God and to remember his teachings, that is the Murli points. So in Dussehra, or we can take Vijayadashami first. So they decorate the deity idol. So as I mentioned earlier, not only that every function has 2 or more stories, and but also all these 3 or more stories has this represent the same thing, and also the way they celebrate that function, it has more than one meaning. So I'm going to reveal the first meaning of Vijayadashami, and also it has another meaning, and both are correct. The first meaning is God makes us eligible to enter heaven. How will be the heaven? It will be filled with all sorts of precious diamonds, jewels. So we'll be that rich. Even the stones would be made out of gold. So think how rich we would be while we were in heaven. Not only that, even cows, they drink water along with goat in the same pond in the same time, which means even wild animals like lion and tiger, they wouldn't have this mindset of eating another animal. Sorry, I actually made a mistake. Lion and goat, they will drink water in the same pond. So they will all be very loving with each other. So that is heaven. So if that's the case, do you think we would be fighting with some demons there? So what is represented in Ramayana and Mahabharata, that we fought, that is the deities fighting with the demons, it did not take place there, because one who is filled with these 5 vices, they are called devils or demons, and we are that now. But when we did not have these vices, we would be called deities and we would be in heaven. So it is separated by time. So there is no way that deities will come here to fight with them, because we ourselves were deities in the beginning and have become devils now, and now we are going to become deities again. So those fights, they didn't exist. Those demons, they didn't exist in heaven. So if they existed, then there's no point for us to make effort to go to heaven, right? So we will be adorned with beautiful clothes and jewels. in heaven, which is why they decorate the idols with all jewels and beautiful saris, and that's going to continue for the first 2500 years, after which they have to fall. The fall of deities happen when we start falling for lust, anger, greed and attachment because of body consciousness. So that is what they show. They celebrate as immersing Devis into the ocean. That is, we are being immersed into the ocean of poison, that is these 5 vices. So, and also it has whole another meaning which is also correct, that is our mind has become like a clay. So that's what they use to scold somebody who has no intellect, right? Is your mind made up of clay? So that's how we all have become in Kali Yuga, in the old world. We do not have the power to discriminate between the good and bad. So whatever we think to be good is actually bad. So we get to know that only through the God's knowledge, Murli. So now God, by giving his knowledge, making us equal to him. So that is what in Bible it is represented as God created man out of clay, and he gives his breath and bring him to life. Actually, one word they have missed, that is bring him back to life. Yes, Adam doesn't represent the first physical being on this planet Earth. We continue to inhabit this earth eternally. There wasn't a single period where no humans exist on this planet Earth. But of course, the population would be very less in the beginning. It was just 9 lakhs. But now it is 1000 crores. So there's a big difference. But what happens is, during the world destruction, most of us would be going there, but there will still be some people on this planet Earth, so that they give birth to the deities. Only after that they will go there. So this will happen. So that is why they create Devi, Durga Devi out of clay. And also in South India, not only in South India, throughout India, they will also have this habit of creating Ganesh, Vinayak out of clay. And during Ganesh Chaturthi, they will dissolve the idols of Ganesh similarly in ocean. So that is why we create these idols out of clay and we decorate them, which means God is now decorating us with the jewels of knowledge. This is the subtle decoration, jewels of knowledge and yoga. Yoga means just considering ourselves to be the souls and remembering God. That's it. So the more we get decorated, more is the chance that we get into heaven. So what happens after the 9 days? Because those 9 days of Navratri stands for the war between the Devi and the devil, right? So what happens here is we are fighting with these 5 vices within our mind, and it takes time, as I mentioned earlier, and towards the end we would be totally out of body consciousness. Though we are inside this body, we will have no consciousness of this body, and we will be considering ourselves as a pure point of light, and we will also see others as a point of light. So that is when the world destruction happens. So only when we have body consciousness, we will have fear facing the world destruction. Since we are totally out of the body consciousness, we will have no fear at all. There will be some left during the world destruction, so that they will give power to the rest who doesn't take this knowledge. So the other people, they will get visions of us who take this knowledge as their God they worship. So if someone is a Christian, So he wants to have the vision of Jesus Christ. So on seeing us, they will have the vision of Jesus Christ. If someone is a great devotee of Sri Narayan, they'll have the vision of Narayan. So this happens just like that. So that is how people in the end they turn to God. And after getting the visions, when they come to us, we wouldn't attract them towards us. Instead, we will ask them, we will direct them to God. We'll direct them to think of God as a point of light, because only if they think of God as a point of light, at least for a second, can they be liberated from this body and go back to our home, which is called mukti. So far, nobody has attained mukti. So that's impossible. Only God can give this mukti through His teaching. You can never know the way about attaining mukti on your own, no matter how strict your penance is. So everybody has to attain mukti, but not everybody will attain Jivan Mukti, which is taking birth in heaven. So that is possible only for those who take knowledge directly from God before the world destruction. Don't worry, you will definitely come to heaven, because unless you are not the member of the deity community, you will never listen to this video this far. Okay, so welcome to the new world, my dear brother and sister. So we have to get rid of this body consciousness. So that is what they do by dissolving the Devi idol in the ocean. So actually they celebrate that day as the victory of Devi. Think for that for a moment. So if it is a victory, how can we dissolve the deity? So what happens is, the fight itself is to get out of this body consciousness, to get out of the body. So that is why they dissolve the body of the Devi, which means after getting rid of the body, what is left? The imperishable soul. Soul is imperishable. It cannot be burnt, it cannot be washed, it cannot be destroyed in any way. That is the actual core of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, right? So that's the actual victory, getting out of the body consciousness, which is why they dissolve the idols, whether it's Ganesha or Devi. And similarly, what they do in Dasara, they also indicate the same. What they do is they burn the physical form of Ravan. Actually, Ravan is not somebody. It is these 5 vices. That is why they have given 10 heads for him. So he exists as long as we believe ourselves to be this body. So once we come out of this body, Ravan is extinct forever. So that is why they burn the physical body of Ravan. So when we come out of this body consciousness, we have conquered Ravan. We have conquered lust, anger, greed, attachment, because we can't fall for these vices without having this body consciousness. You can have this evil even without the body, because that's how these ghosts exist, right? They don't have body on its own. They will take body, or even without taking the body, they will be so angry and they will create some disturbances to others. So it's not a matter of coming out of the body, but coming out of the body consciousness. So we have to burn the body consciousness totally, which is why they burn Ravan totally. So now coming to Ramayana, where there is at one point this Ram, God Ram, he hides behind a mountain and aims arrow at, he shoots arrow at Wali and kills him. So people think that God has created something that's not good. But what that actually represents is, God doesn't have a body on his own. That's the difference between the souls and Supreme Soul. We take birth in a mother's womb, God doesn't. But still he needs a body to give this knowledge. That is why he enters an old man's body in the end, and he names him Brahma, and he start giving this knowledge through his mouth, and that Brahma's body is represented as Nandi. So you will always see Shivling accompanied by Nandi. Actually, the Shivling itself consists of Nandi. The lower half part is nothing but Nandi, that is Brahma. So the upper half, that is elliptical in shape, that represents God, who is a point of light. Since we cannot perform puja on this point of light, they have a little bit bigger form. So that is what Shivling actually represents. And after performing puja, there is a part called Gaumukh, from which the water or milk flows during puja, right? So that Gaumukh represents the mouth of Brahma, through which God's knowledge or the Ganges of knowledge flows out. So the Ganges actually represent the knowledge that comes out of Brahma's mouth, but this is actually the knowledge of God and not Brahma, which is why God Shiva is worshipped widely and Brahma is not worshipped that much. Well, there is temple, but very rare. Well, that's it, friends. If you like this video, please hit the like button and leave your valuable comments, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please click on subscribe and hit the bell button to get the latest notifications. And also don't forget to share this video with all friends and relatives, no matter what faith and religion they belong to, because God's knowledge belongs to everybody. So it's our duty to get this message across. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching.